Good evening. Welcome to SOGCast number 32. My name is John Stryker-Meyer. I'll be your host tonight. And I'm joined by our outstanding technician from Jocko Productions, Carrie Helton. Carrie, welcome to the show. Thank you for everything. And as always, we thank Jocko Willink and his team for being a sponsor on the SOGCast interviews and our podcast as we capture stories from the men who fought in SOG during the 8-year secret war conducted during the war in South Vietnam. As the team waited for helicopters from Company A, the Comancheros, the 101st Aviation, 101st Airborne Division, had bad weather, and they would start to close in the ridge line. The first chopper started to lift off Wesley, Robinson, and 2 Brew team members. The 4 men jumped from the ladder they had started to climb. The helicopter crew had to cut loose the ladder. Because the mountainous area was thin, a second chopper had a difficult time lifting off of the ridgeline, actually dragging the 4 team members through the jungle before clearing it. A third chopper lifted out the 3 remaining Brew team members, carrying no more men due to the weather. As darkness closed in, Chief Warrant Officer 2, George P. Berg, returned to the LZ to pick up the 3 remaining Green Berets. Helicopter Crew Chief Spec 4 Walter Dempsey and door gunner Gary L. Johnson lowered 3 stable extraction harness rigs attached to ropes that were more than 100 feet long to the trio of soldiers on the ground. Stable harness rigs were designed by Special Forces during the war for extraction from the jungle when no landing zones were available. In the event a soldier was shot or knocked unconscious, the stable rigs were designed to keep a soldier connected to the extraction rope. They hooked into the stable rigs as Doc Watson gave the chopper crew chief the liftoff signal. Berg began moving off of the LZ when NVA gunfire slammed into the aircraft. Dempsey and Johnson returned furious gunfire from their M60 machine guns. Hernandez was lifted to approximately 30 to 40 feet off the ground when his stable rig snagged on a tree, snapping the rope that held him. The Green Beret fell to the ground, knocked unconscious. He didn't hear NVA DPAA anti-aircraft artillery fire slam into the Huey, literally knocking it out of the sky. The ill-fated helicopter traveled approximately 600 feet before it made an ugly U-turn, flipped over, and crashed into the side of a mountain, bursting into flames, while also slamming Doc Watson, baby Jesus Lloyd, into the side of the cliff, killing them instantly. Miraculously, Sammy Hernandez survived the fall. When he regained consciousness, he heard NVA soldiers and trackers searching for the men of RT Intruder. The stealthy jungle fighter moved silently into thick vegetation and hid for what would be a long night. When darkness fell, Hernandez emerged briefly from his hiding place to slam his dislocated left shoulder into a tree in order to pop the shoulder bone back into the joint. Many years later, Hernandez simply said, "That really hurt. Believe me, I saw stars." On February 19th, RT Habu, led by 1-0 Staff Sergeant Danzer, was inserted into the target to recover the dead bodies, presuming that Hernandez was KIA at the time. Other Green Berets on that mission included Cliff Newman, Staff Sergeant James Woodham, a medic, SFC Jimmy Horton, Sergeant Lemuel McLaughlin, and SFC Charles Wesley, who had been lifted out of the target the previous day. Wesley volunteered for the mission and put one of the 6 bags and extra ammo in his rucksack. This expanded RT Habu with running a bright light to recover the dead soldiers from the tragic crash. And today, I'm honored to have with us a guest, Cliff Newman, who was on that bright light, who at that time we first met at CCN around 1970 or early 1970 or late 69. I remember meeting you in the bar. And Cliff joins us today. Cliff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Del. Good to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you here, and you've got several stories that are part of our SOG legendary history, and that mission is one that has many unique spin-offs from it. And on that mission, that target area, again, there had prior with RT Intruder was inserted. They were on the west of the Ashaw Valley, and then another recon team was inserted on the east of the Ashaw because they were anticipating a major operation with the South Vietnamese Army. And that's when they're inserted. RT Intruder ran into a world of shit. And that's why they got extracted, and then we had that horrific helicopter crash. And so a bright light in SOG is a recon team or a team designed to go in for one purpose, to recover the dead bodies. And in this case, you carry minimal food, minimal water, and like we said, body bags and much ammunition. So on February 19th, 1971, you're inserted without much incident?
Well, the insertion went without any problems whatsoever. We back up a little bit. There's a total of 3 teams, and this whole thing was in support of an operation called Lamson 719.
Oh my God!
Which was the first incursion of U.S. forces and Vietnamese counterparts into Laos. They used SOG recon teams because of their experience, professionalism, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know the thinking of the powers to be, but there was RT Intruder, as you said, on the west side of the Ashaw, RT Python, and another team further south that was from a different CNC. I'm not sure which one it was. However, the original plan was for RT Intruder to set up a relay site, a radio relay site. They knew from the onset that it was going to be a dangerous mission. They went in, they were hit by a larger enemy force, and the team leader, Doc Watson, called for an extraction, and that's when everything started turning south, so to speak. I was at the compound at CCN in Da Nang, and I had stopped running recon. My final mission was a combat halo insertion that Sammy Hernandez was on, and Sammy and I became very good friends. We traveled back to the States together after our halo mission, and when Sammy came up to CCN after a Delta project shut down, I took him on his first operation.
Really?
Yeah. SOG was unique in that way, in that I was a staff sergeant, but I was a 1-0, was my team.
Sure.
Sammy was a sergeant first class, and we also took a young lieutenant by the name of Fred Wunderlich.
Fred?
Fred Wunderlich.
Oh, okay.
A brief side note on that operation was we were on our mission was for a prisoner snatch mission, but we set up on a little karst hill formation overlooking the Ho Chi Minh Trail to reconnoiter, and we were surrounded instantly, but we were high and dry. And that evening, we actually observed we presume a Russian-made bulldozer doing road work on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And early the next morning, I ascertained where it went off into the wood line, and we called an airstrike and actually got the thing.
All right.
And a major depot of some sort or another. Anyway, so Sam and I became friends, and we were back at the camp. I was running the little recon club we had there at CCN.
Sure. The one back in the recon company area.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And we had set up a Halo school down in Longton, and I was wanting to go down there, but Sergeant Major Rodriguez wanted me to stay up at CCN for some reason. But anyway, I'd ran recon for about a year and a half at that time, and I was through. I was done.
Oh, yeah.
AO was saturated. But when word came back that RT Intruder was shot down and there were 3 missing, presumed killed in action from us plus the crew, I was kind of devastated, and having a little experience, if you will, I went up to the Tactical Operations Center, the TOC,
Sure.
and said, as Sammy was one of my good friends, I said I'd like to go on the bright light, and I was readily accepted.
Sure.
So off we go.
An experience 1-0 is always welcome on any bright light.
Yeah. And it's kind of so we went in, and I went in, and Danzer was the 1-0 of the team. Lem McLaughlin was an E5 sergeant. He was the 1-1, the assistant team leader. But RT Habu was a very experienced team, and they were well trained. And and Danzer was not highly experienced, but was a good 1-0. And Minnie McLaughlin, as we called him, was a good soldier too. Jimmy Horton had a lot of experience. In fact, he was a former 1-0 of RT Habu. Charles Wesley was an experienced. This is his 3rd time in that AO, and had actually been in the Hamburger Hill incident with the 101st Airborne Division.
Really?
Yeah, he was a
I remember him.
highly experienced combat veteran. Sadly, cancer got him later on. And Jim Woodham, Doc Woodham, was one of 2 Woodham brothers, twins. They were both Special Forces medics. They were both Rangers.
No.
And neither one of them had to be there because they were twin brothers and serving in a combat role. But they were there.
Wow.
Jim, by the way, retired lieutenant colonel, is a doctor, medical doctor now. And I think his brother's an ophthalmologist, I believe. I'm not sure. So anyway, we go to the launch site at Fubai.
Is that Camp Eagle?
Yeah. Off we go, and we went into the same LZ, which is normally a no-no, but there was no other area to land that was compatible to land a helicopter in anywhere. I mean, this was a high elevation.
Sure.
It was Hill 1528, which is 1,500 or 1,528 meters high, which is over 3,000 feet.
And it's in the Ashall Valley. It's
overlooking the Ashall. Yeah, I had Laos is one side, Vietnam's on the other side. We're overlooking the Ashall Valley. Excuse me. So we went into the original LZ, which was in Laos, and then trekked back along the border to where the crash site was. And we did locate the crash site, and everyone had perished. Excuse me. We found the 4-member crew, the remains of the 4-member crew, and we began to put what remains we could in body bags, pick up any paperwork, anything we found that was not burned.
Right.
We put in a body bag. At that altitude and that locale, weather comes in every day around 1,500, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a package coming to get us, but could not come in because of the weather. I mean, it was socked in. So the team leader, Danzer, had to opted to RON. So we moved to a location he'd picked. And again, I was a strap hanger, so I wasn't paying a lot attention. I was just following along. I was there to find my friend Sammy. And en route, we located the bodies of Watson and Lloyd, who had Jim would have verified that they were obviously deceased. So our plan was to come back and get them the next day.
How far down the hill were the bodies when do you remember how far down it was?
I do not.
Okay.
It's hard to say.
But you had to move them up to the top in the body bags.
We were moving. Would have been southwest up toward higher ground.
Sure.
When we encountered them.
Man, that's gruesome duty.
Oh, tough
Oh,
terrain.
my God, I can't imagine.
Tough terrain. So that was a plan, which is not the only plan available. We set up an RON site, and it was a oval-shaped site. I was at the top on the uphill side of the site, and I set out 2 claymores. And Jimmy Horton and Danzer were in the middle of the perimeter with the team, with Doc Woodham, with the team more or less spread around and Wesley at the bottom. About 7 a.m. the next morning, I heard movement. I alerted the rest of the team, and we could see bushes moving.
Sure.
Grass, bushes.
And it wasn't the wind.
And it wasn't the wind. About that time, they started raining grenades on us, and it was followed with small arm fire. I fired my 2 claymores and turned and started down the hill where the team was obviously retrograding down the hill, and encountered Jimmy Horton, who's one of these grenades had taken the lower part of his leg pretty much off.
Whoa.
So I grabbed him in one hand and what was left of his foot in the other hand and kept going down the hill. We fell over a pretty steep embankment, maybe 15 feet-ish, and came to the area where the rest of the team is set up. At that time, and as it happened, and they were just getting organized and, and returning fire where they could, where they thought they should. The 1-0 Danzer, apparently one of these grenades went off right next to him, and he was stunned, obviously. And he had a Swedish K that he was carrying, and he had the handset of a radio in his hand, trying to call Covey, call support, call help. But it was not attached to anything. His rucksack was gone with the radio.
Really?
Yeah. And he was obviously shocked by the concussion.
Sure.
And but he was trying. I mean, he was trying, and I had to be close to him as I am from you right here, and figured somebody better do something quick. And I always carried a survival radio that I pulled out and came up on guard for.
Good old ERC 10.
Oh yeah. Was it 90? Might have been ERC 10. I don't remember. I came up on guard and made contact with Covey, and we just started calling in the world. And for the next 4.5 hours or so, we shut it out with the NVA unit. Don't know the exact size. We're estimating maybe a company at the most.
But here's another thing, too. When you mentioned it earlier about how there had been intense enemy anti-aircraft, you had a note that you would provide to me earlier. And at that time, in February of 71, the Ashall Valley had never been hotter. Captured documents revealed that the NVA had moved 11 counter recon companies there to reinforce LZ watchers, trackers, and dogs, rear security units, and infantry battalions, all there to get SOG recon. And then additionally, they had 2 anti-aircraft battalions defending the valley, with one located at each end. The Ashall diversion was initially assigned to the 2,000-man-strong 1st Brigade, 101st Airborne. However, the specter of heavily U.S. losses forced the planners to reconsider the Airborne Brigade. But at that point, those kind of assets, plus you had 11 counter recon companies at that point in time. And their sole job was when they heard or thought you all were in the AO. And we'll come back and talk more about what you and your team did 2 months earlier in an effort to thwart some of that activity with a different tactic. But that's just, I wanted to get that flavor in some of those facts about what the aircraft were up against.
Yeah, I learned later on, talking to one of my trips back, to a intel guy, he was an older gentleman that was actually a civilian intel guy in SOG headquarters in Saigon, and he still lives there. He has homes in the U.S. and homes in Vietnam. And he said there were like two brigades or 2 battalions. I don't remember exactly what he said. One on the Laotian side, one on the Vietnamese side, just for counter recon operations.
Wow.
And that AO. And that was the most important AO to the North Vietnamese. That's where the Ho Chi Minh Trail started going into South Vietnam.
Right. Absolutely.
And, so that was a very important area, and they didn't, they couldn't afford to lose it.
Sure. And, just for our new listeners, I mean, in the early part of the Secret War, which went from 64 to 72, we had FOB 3 at Khe Sanh, FOB 1 was at Phu Bai, and then, of course, FOB 2 was Kon Tum further south, and then Da Nang, FOB 4. And, 1, 3, and 4, strictly the AO was Laos, the DMZ, and on occasions, we had teams that went north. We had Tim Schaff on the earlier podcast interview talked about going into North Vietnam in 1968 for a target. So that's some of the missions, and that's the trail. That's why the Ashall was such a hot. And, of course, in the early part of the war, 64, 65, we had 3 Green Beret A camps in the Ashall, all of which were wiped out by 1966. The NBA just came down and pushed them out. Absolutely.
Tough area.
Very tough. And we lost a lot of good men and teams down there, not to mention aircraft. And again, so you're now there, you're on the ground, the firefight goes on for 4.5 hours. During that time, was that when you lost a covey?
We lost a covey at the onset before we were hit, actually. And my memory is a little vague.
Yeah, but
we may have lost. I think we lost a covey the afternoon before, and we were at the crash site.
Okay. Yeah, because we had.
And that was Woodstock.
Correct. I don't keep the name straight as well as you do, so.
It's called Simon's Woodstock.
Yeah. Oh, and also I forgot. Just as a sidebar, Billy Wall was up with one of the helicopter. I said I don't know if he was in a covey or a helicopter, but he saw a panel from Sammy, and they're able to pull Sammy out. So at least you had a little bit of good news in the middle of all
one of the coveys or one of the slow movers saw the panel and reported back to wherever that they may have been an American down. They weren't sure. They thought at first it might have been the Vietnamese.
Sure.
Sammy is a little dark complected, and we were, of course, in sterile uniforms.
Yeah.
And Billy Waugh went out on a helicopter, and sure enough, it was Sammy. And they wanted to drop a rope to him and a string, a stable rig, and Sammy gave him the old the French hello there and said, "I'm not never getting on one of those things again."
After what he had just been through.
So he landed, picked him up, and got him out.
Wow. And then also, at that same time, a Covey Cessna 02 twin-engine light observation plane flown by Air Force First Lieutenant James Woodstock Hull with veteran recon man SFC Jose Fernandez. And with our Coveys, we always had the Air Force pilot, and then we had a Covey rider, just for our listeners or listeners for the first time. And a Covey rider would be a Green Beret who served in SOG, had time on the ground, and that was one of the unique ways and methods of SOG to improve commo between the men on the ground under fire with air assets and TAC air at that time. And that's why Sergeant First Class Fernandez was flying, and that aircraft was shot down to add to all the other pandemonium. And then, of course, the other recon team across the valley had also been engaged by the enemy. So there was a lot going on in the Ashall Valley that day. And getting back to where you left off for the extraction, then at some point you're engaged for 4.5 hours before. I didn't realize it was that long. Yeah. Oh my God!
How much detail do you want me to go in?
Whatever you got. That's why we're here.
Well,
Because you kept Horton alive?
yeah. Well, Jim Woodham kept Horton alive. I
Yeah.
carried him down a hill.
What was your MOS? Were you a commo or?
No, I was an intel guy. I was O&I.
Oh, okay. Very good.
11 Foxtrot. At that
Foxtrot,
time,
yes.
which is now the 18 Foxtrot. But so we had Jimmy in our new perimeter with the assistance of Mac and Horton and of course Wesley. We were returning fire where it came from, and because of the terrain, most of the fire was from our direct front, which is up the hill. It was very, very steep terrain, and we had some fire from our flanks. But there was nowhere to go other than jumping over cliffs and whatever down,
Yeah.
So we were there.
And you had no ropes to do any rappelling.
No. So at that time, Covey came up. That was Tom Yarborough, and I talked to him extensively. He called in. He had 3 layers of aircraft. One Cobras from the 101st. They came in, and I worked close air support. Brought in VNAV, Vietnamese Air Force H-30 or A-1Es, Sky Raiders.
They were pretty good too, weren't they?
The slow move. Oh, they're tremendous.
The South Vietnamese version of the Sky Raiders were good.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
I'm talking to this pilot, and he's speaking in slow, very distinct English, identifying himself and his wingman and his ordnance. And he said, I have Mark 25s. And I said, yeah, give me some of those. And I don't know what Mark 25 was. It was a 250-pound bomb. It went off, about 2 of them went right next to us. And I blew trees and mountain yards and rocks.
And you had a little elevation off the ground with that impact, yeah.
And then the third layer was fast movers that worked the ridge line where the enemy was and where they came from.
Right.
And that's probably one of the main factors that saved us, is that air support.
Absolutely.
And we brought in a Huey to get Horton out, and Wesley and I moved somewhat out in the open to sit up, get smoke, and direct a Huey in. This guy came in, and I sent one of the mountain yards down to grab the rope and bring it back up.
Yeah.
And he hooked himself to the rope to facilitate getting up the hill. And so doing an RPG with apparently a variable time fuse went off right next to the helicopter.
No.
Wounded the co-pilot, wounded the door gunner. That guy did a 180 and took off and jerked that mountain yard right out. That poor guy. His eyes were big as saucers. He's there trying to climb. Next thing you know, he's up in the air going away.
Yeah, and he was there for the fight. He hadn't planned on leaving.
So anyway, that was that, and we kept the battle going. And Archie Hobble, being a well-trained team, were tremendous. I mean, you hear of teams splitting when
the going got tough.
The going got tough.
Not them.
And here we had 6 Brew Mountain Yards going toe-to-toe with a NVA company, and they kicked their ass. And,
no kidding.
Oh yeah. So I credit Danzer and Mac for having a very well trained team.
Yeah, because eventually Mac became the 1-0 later on. Then he had some other team member with a high degree of notoriety. We don't even mention Nick's name here.
No. Excuse me. So.
But his book is Refuel. It's a good one. But go ahead.
It is. At that time, the firing had died down a little bit, and through the wonders of airborne communication, there was a SAR rescue bird, an HH-53, coming in, a Jolly Green Giant.
Sure, the biggest of the big.
And this guy kept chugging in there, and they have twin miniguns mounted.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And we're on the side of a hill, and this guy pulls in like he's going to park for a while, and miniguns are going. He lowers a jungle penetrator that has a capability, which is a device. These things are designed primarily for bringing down pilots out of triple canopy.
And these have steel cable instead of rope,
yeah.
and they come down,
Right,
quickly drop to the ground,
on a
seat
winch.
unfolds.
Seats unfold. Sit down, snap in, and
The ride up is a little slower than the rope, the cable coming down.
tell me about it. So I'm still kind of running things at this time.
Yeah.
And we got Horton up. We got the team up. And I kept Danzer and Woodham and myself for last, which was a mistake because as we cleared the tree line, our combined weight caused the winch to break.
No.
Yeah. And crashed back to the ground. And I
How far away off the ground were you when that thing broke loose?
20, 30 feet.
I missed that part of the story.
Oh, yeah. That's a little...
Yes, it's there.
Anyway, so I unhooked and stayed in the ground by myself, and they got them out, and then they dropped it down and got me out.
So what's life like in the Ashall Valley all by yourself?
Scary. It wasn't long. It wasn't long. It was about maybe a about a 90-second elapsed time frame. But you're being shot at 90 seconds can be a lifetime.
Yeah, particularly when your adrenaline's flowing, because every second feels like an hour. But
So-
you're there by yourself. They finally got the winch down to you. And on the way out, did they rush the LZ in an attempt to get you and the helicopter?
If they did, I don't know. I don't think so because the
Yeah.
fast motors are still working, miniguns are working, and I spent about my last 2 magazines working.
Wow, right down to the last magazine. And then,
And then one of the mountain yards had a CS round for an M79,
yeah,
and he popped that sucker off the tailgate. So we had CS gas down there.
a little farewell present.
I got on board, went and tapped the pilot in the shoulder and says, "Let's go get a cold one." And he said,
Yeah.
"All right," and off we go.
No kidding.
Ironically, which has come out later and fairly recently, we were never debriefed.
What?
We were never debriefed.
Okay.
We flew in, stopped at an evac hospital, and I can't tell you where, and got Horton and maybe a couple of wounded yards off, but definitely Horton. And then they flew on into Da Nang. They landed right in the helipad at the CCN compound. And
The Air Force was extra courteous that day. Sometimes
yeah.
they wouldn't go that far. But
Oh,
it could have
yeah.
been the Wei Fu Bai airstrip. They had the hospital facility there.
it was. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I could guess, but I don't know.
No, that's okay.
I do know they flew us into Da Nang
Sure, that's what counts.
because we got off the helicopter, dropped my stuff in the hooch, and went to the bar. And I was never debriefed.
What?
Never debriefed.
Oh, my God.
You have to remember, USAV was kind of in charge. This 5th group was gone by this time, so we were Task Force 1,
Alpha?
Alpha Echo Advisory Element,
Yes.
and nobody knew who the hell we were.
Even you guys didn't know who you were. But the missions kept coming.
Well, they kind of stopped not long after that. I mean, there's no, why run Recon when everybody knows what's in there?
Well, it could be so, too. Yeah. I know that, well, in some case, like with Ken Bower, when he was done with Idaho then ran some missions where the 01 was the 10. And that was part of the Vietnamization process. I don't know how many other teams were able to do that, but still, that was, as the war was cranking down, the effort was to get our mission, less combat, let the South Vietnamese fight for their country if they wanted to.
When we had the Halo School going, we trained some Vietnamese-led teams.
No kidding. And so
They all had sore ankles and so on. They weren't going to do that.
because everybody was using still the old T10s back then?
Well,
Or by then did they have the MC1 at least?
no. We I'm not sure what they used later on.
Yeah.
We on our insert in our program. We modify T10s into a 7-gore TU configuration.
Okay.
And we had our little school set up. We had paracommanders, and we had the Mark II paracommanders, which then were state of the art.
Wow. Okay.
And but as far as the teams going in, I don't.
Well, that's right. It's like a secondary thought on my part, just looking back.
Yeah.
But here too, there was one other. Well, so your personal history here. So this is 71. How much longer did you stay in the Army at that point?
Well, this was in February of 71. March, April. I rotated out of the country. I wanted to go down to Longton and teach Halo, but Sergeant Rodriguez won't let me go. So my time came, and I said, I'm going home. So I came home, and they sent me back. I wanted to go to Okinawa, the first group, but they sent me back to the 10th group in Fort Devens.
The dreaded 10th.
Yeah. So I went back to Fort Devens, and I was there just maybe shy of a year before I managed to get away. Got to the first group in Okinawa, where I actually got on my first A team, and I was really happy. Yeah, I was a intel sergeant on A222.
Okay, yeah.
And had some great missions, and I went to scuba school there, and combat dive course. Snuck some jumps in with the Halo committee.
Of course.
Yeah.
Got to keep that jump status alive. Yeah.
And in November of 72, well, one mission we ran, my team and a few others, we went into the Philippines. It shows you what Special Forces does.
Oh, yeah.
We spent a month in the Philippines giving mass inoculations for cholera and typhoid.
No kidding.
After a typhoon came in and wiped out a good portion of the Pampanga province.
Whoa.
So,
but you never hear that.
nah, we're combat soldiers one day and humanitarians the next day. So
Outstanding. Part of the SF tradition.
So in November of 72, my team and a couple others were sent back to Vietnam with what they call the FANC projects, the Forces Army Republic of Khmer.
Yes.
It was a joint operation. The Australians were involved, and they had some permanent party SF guys there.
Was that part of that B-36 program that had been going on for a few years earlier?
The camp was where B-36 was. That's at Long High.
Right.
And there was another camp right down the road at Phuc Tuy. And we were training Cambodians. My team and another, we had a group of 100, like school teachers, professional people, not run-of-the-mill Cambos.
Yeah.
And these guys were going to form the nucleus of the special force in the Cambodian army, of which, of course, there is no more.
Right.
And while on a training mission, ironically, I stepped on a booby trap and shattered my foot. And I was medevaced into Saigon and from there to Okinawa and had all kind of issues and eventually lost my whole foot and was medically retired. And that retirement came through in April of 1973.
Wow, okay. But that didn't stop you from jumping. You were still able to...
Well, it did for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through a tough period.
I can't imagine.
Finally got back into it, and that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Well, then, yes, absolutely. Then you, Wesley, and Mac were contacted by the then JTFFA, and in February 2003, you went back. And that, I forget what that acronym is, Joint Task Force?
Full accounting.
Full accounting, okay. Which over time they had many different names for that, but that agency or the agencies involved.
It's now the DPAA.
Which is the DOD's Department of POW MA Accounting Agency.
Defense.
Defense.
POW MIA POW accounting agency.
And that agency was consolidated a few years back, and they brought together 3 different offices to make one in an effort to theoretically improve their efforts to go back for our MIAs, Men Americans Missing in Action. And on that first mission, you went back. The mission ended without locating, because you were going back for the 6 Americans from that initial mission where you had everybody in the body bags. And what happened on that one?
Well, to back up a little bit,
Sure, please.
I was contacted by then the JCRC, Joint Casualty Recovery Commission, that morphed into the JTFFA. And this is like 1998-ish. And I was asked if I would meet with the brother by the name of the Walt Dempsey, who was one of the door gunners.
Right.
And his name was Dave Dempsey. And I said I'd be happy to meet with him. And I did. And he, sharp guy, and he in fact tried to go back himself, and he wrote a little thing called The Missing Men of RT Intruder. And he never did. He had very little assistance, and he didn't have the wherewithal to climb mountains and
Sure.
et cetera, et cetera. But he gave it a shot. From that, Wes and Mac got involved, and we actually did go to Hawaii and meet up with the JTFF team there. And we're going to go in, launch. And the team leader at that time was a Marine gunny sergeant, nice guy, sharp guy. And it was scrubbed. The Vietnamese scrubbed it.
So you had flown to South Vietnam or
No,
Vietnam? No?
We got as far as Hawaii.
No kidding.
The headquarters,
Okay.
where the headquarters of the then JTFFA was.
Right. And what year was that, do you think?
That was probably 98, 99.
Right.
Prior to that, we were on tab, but a helicopter crashed in Vietnam.
Oh, the tragic crash. We lost like 17 or 19.
Yeah, it was, well,
God.
the command structure from the JTFA were killed, and that put everything on hold.
Sure.
And in 2003, we finally got authorization to go in the country. And there was cooperation was nothing like it is today.
With Vietnamese.
Between the Laotians and the Vietnamese.
Sure. And this is now, we're already talking 31 years after the mission. And you are trying to go back. Yes, sir.
We had coordinates where the crash site was.
Sure, you were on the ground.
And we had coordinates taken later on and everything. So we knew where it was. And where it was going to be impossible to get to without, without an LC being dug.
Sure.
Because we couldn't go into Laos and come back into Vietnam.
No kidding.
There was some flat terrain in the hills of Laos that we went in originally on, but you couldn't land anywhere near where the crash site was because of the terrain. And Laos would let us go into Laos.
Wow.
The Vietnamese were very difficult to deal with at that time, and a lot of money involved.
Always.
They were supposed to have cut an LZ. We're in Laos. We're in Laos. We're in
Vietnam.
We're in Hawaii.
Oh, getting ready.
We flew out of Hickam, landed in Guam, flew into Da Nang. From Da Nang, we stayed in Da Nang a couple, 3 days, convoyed over to Hai Vai Pass to Phu Bai.
Really?
In Phu Bai, they have contract. They weren't VNAF. They were contracted helicopters, civilian helicopter company.
Sure.
with old Russian Mi-17s.
No.
Yeah. We're supposed to fly into this LZ that was cut, and it wasn't an LZ cut.
No.
There's no LZ.
So you flew out in a helicopter to discover there's no LZ?
Yeah. Now, I don't know who knew what at that time.
Sure.
Again, we're just going on, So we landed down in Alui there, and at the base of the Ashaw, and the team leader was a retired warrant officer, intel guy. Strange, weird, odd guy. I won't mention any names. So we're going to climb the mountain. We had 1 day to do this.
To climb the mountain and come back?
Yeah, the helicopter was not going to wait for us. Without more contract, they were not going to come back and get us. So we take off up the side of this hill 1528 toward the LZ. We got about maybe a third of the way up, and part of this is literally, and it's wet. The soil is wet because of the rains
Sure.
and the weather and everything. We're literally crawling, pulling,
Sure.
and finally, there was just no way we were going to get up there. And the team leader widely said, "This ain't going to work." So we turned around, and came back down again. Laid out on the ground. They did bring some mountain yards who lived in the vicinity in. Interrogated them, and they do remember some of them. Yeah, we remember getting metal from that area up there, and so on and so forth. So they had some intel that's where the crash site was. But that mission was nothing to go.
Oh.
I got called again in 2008, 2009.
Right.
And went back, and things had changed quite a bit. A lot more cooperation with the Vietnamese, and there was a Vietnamese unit doing the same thing as the JPAC, as it was called then.
Right. Okay.
And we had this VNAF colonel who was the main guy. And he ran a whole show. And the U.S. team was headed up by a warrant officer. And these are real sharp intel guys, and they knew what they were doing and poring over maps, and So we and he had an LZ cut. There's a picture of me standing alongside his LZ they had cut somewhere. Long story short,
On the wrong hill.
yeah, I took a picture of Hill 1528 about 2 clicks over there. The mission that this Vietnamese guy, or team leader, not guy, I mean, he was a colonel in Vietnamese, was altogether different site. It was some other site that was supposed to, so we're in the wrong place.
Yes, Cool Hand Luke would say, "What we'll have here is a failure to communicate."
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
That was funny. We went everywhere we went. This Vietnamese colonel pulled a lot of weight in that, and the whole AO there. I mean, we ate where he wanted to eat and stopped when he wanted to stop, and
And failed to get the good intel when you need good, accurate intel, and you knew where you could go, but he couldn't get you there. Oh.
So in 2018,
Yes, sir.
I go back.
And before you get into this, we just got to say, what makes you and what you've done here special to all the SOG community and any Vietnam vet is you're one of only a few Americans that have ever gone back to actually be there working with our government on it. Of course, sometimes the government doesn't make it easy on people that want to help.
Well, I don't want to make it sound like I'm beating on doors to go back and say fellow man. I mean,
No. But you were asked, and as always, you
but yeah.
responded.
And I was the one, and they one of their main sources of intel was veterans. I mean, guys who were on the ground. For example, they used Kaviani to go up on Hickory And he actually found some.
Sergeant Jones.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And I was one of the living witnesses to this whole thing at the time. So anyway, I go back. Things are looking a lot better. We go into get to Da Nang. I was in much better physical shape than I am right now, I tell you. So,
Well, we all were.
so we launched out of Fubai again on probably the same helicopter.
No.
We fly into an LZ that had been cut right on top of Hill 1528, and the winds are honking. I mean, there are strong, gusty winds coming from the west.
Mm-hmm.
And that guy, he was no youngster flying that helicopter, did a masterful job of landing. I mean, if I was flying, I'd have probably turned around and gone
No
back.
kidding. Yeah.
This guy landed. We tied the helicopter down. There was actually a Laotian military unit set up there that had cut a trail down to the coordinates of where this crash site was.
Really?
Yeah. And the Vietnamese were bringing in resupplies for this Laotian military unit.
Wow.
And they're friendly, and and there's a trail runs right along the border right up there, and there's no problem crossing back and forth. Yeah. So anyway,
Some progress, at least.
we go down, and I got some pictures of this on my phone. We ascertain within like 4 to 6 meters that we found the site where this crash was. We moved a ways away, and I remember one striking thing. There was like at the original battle site.
Yeah.
There was or I should say the original crash site. There was a break in the trees where I could actually see the Ashall Valley, through the trees.
Yeah. Okay.
And I had that same view.
So you knew you were on the spot.
Yeah. And I just felt it,
Sure.
And this, the intel guy on the team with the GPS, he said, "Hey, we're here." So we go back, and that's successful. We find I have no say in what goes on from here, but the way they work, they send in these survey teams, and then it's determined whether it's worth excavating. Then they send in a recovery team, and they do an actual archaeological dig.
Well, the thing I never cleared up in my mind, even to today, was at the crash site, and then after the firefight, and after you had all of the body parts put into body bags for the 6 body bags, how far away from the crash site were the body bags when you all had to survive? And
well, we moved maybe 40, 50 meters to where we set up an RON.
Right.
Where the battle took place.
Sure.
Now, going on a little bit here was interesting. That was my last hurrah. I mean,
Sure.
They didn't need me anymore. A team with the same intel guy did go back, and they found a ledge that they feel is the one that we jumped and fell over.
Mm-hmm.
They found he called me.
Really?
On a cell phone from Vietnam to Long Beach, to Fayetteville, and he asked me. He says, "Hey, Cliff, do any of your team members have AK-47s?" I said, "No, but the guys that are shooting at us sure did." They found a lot of shell casings, 7.62 shell casings.
Sure.
In another area, they found what looks like turnbuckles. You know, when you rig a helicopter for jumping or rappelling.
Yeah.
They found something that resembled a turnbuckle. And one of the most striking pieces of evidence, I think, they found an unexploded claymore.
No.
Yeah. And to my knowledge, the only people carrying claymores were us. And all of ours were exploded. You know? So my thoughts are that claymore might have been in Watson or Lloyd's rucksack.
Sure, that makes sense.
You know?
Yeah.
I could be wrong. It's a wild-ass guess on my part, but I think that may be. And as of yet, I've asked a few questions. The case is it's case 1706, 1706. It's still open. What they're going to do with it, I don't know. As you know, I mean, odds of finding remains with the acidity of the soil and so on and so forth.
Yeah, the most acidic soil in the world.
Yep.
Southeast Asia, which will eventually destroy all bones except maybe the teeth.
Teeth, maybe fingernails.
God.
Personal thoughts. There's 6 souls up there that need to come home.
Amen.
I would like to see them excavate. I doubt if they ever will. It's tough to get up there. But they do, you know, like you see on TV, with they sift and sand and sift. And who knows?
Oh, yeah.
But I'm still in touch with them. And those guys at the DPAA, you bet a lot of them.
Well, yeah, and in fairness, all the ground crews, anybody that are on those teams in country are go-getters.
Oh, they are.
They've all earned our respect over the years, and as we go through this bitter side of the secret war, I don't know if we said it in the beginning of the program or not, but when you did this, there was like 1,600 plus MIAs, and today the number is still 1,582. So over a 9-year period of time, there's been minimal returns, and there's a lot of other sidebars we could maybe get into, but maybe not right now. That's frustrating in terms of bringing people back. But you, James Shorten Jones, are the 2 SOG guys that I know personally that have gone in, worked with DPA or whatever the preceding agencies were in those efforts to help locate and, as you said, to bring them home.
There's some SF guys. I forget who it was, but somebody went into Quezon and or not Quezon, but Langvay.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And
maybe it was Paul Longrear.
Could have been.
Because Paul went up on a mission.
And again,
I don't know if he was with DPA or whatever the equivalent of DPA was at that time.
Yeah.
What to give Paul a call.
But one of the issues a lot of us have is, you know, is politics are involved.
Yes, sir.
It's higher end. One reason the DPAA is under Department of Defense. That was supposed to have eliminated a lot of the bureaucratic nonsense that goes on between agencies, and it didn't do squat.
Yes, and we at 4.5, or now it's almost 5 years later.
Well, they're finding, you know, no disrespect intended, but World War II guys, and they're fairly easy to find, you know, and so it's become kind of a numbers game.
When they're doing a disinterment and then calling that bringing home missing, there's a PR game here that's not being completely factual.
Yeah,
and also to your credit, you and I are both members of the Special Forces Association and the Special Operations Association, where you're served as president, board of directors, and general do everything guy. I remember coming to the reunions, and you're the guy behind the scenes just holding everything together. But in I was 13 or 14, the SOA put together a POW MIA committee. Mike Taylor was the chairman, and you're a part of that committee that's worked every year to work with DPA in efforts, because now at the SOA reunions, DPA sends out reps to talk to any of our guys that have any new information about any of our people. And so that's the good side of the operation. The negative side is that the between the ground people that do the work and there are people that are still care at mid-level, there's too many bureaucrats and politicians that want the big numbers. So they say every year we got 200 people we brought back. And like you said, no disrespect intended, but this agency was formed for Vietnam vets from the Vietnam War. And since then it's been expanded. And it's very disturbing and very political. Yeah. Maybe we'll come back and do another show on that. But before we do that, and before we go into the second footnote in SOG history as to why we've invited you today, how did all this begin? Where did Cliff Newman begin in lovely downtown El Cajon, back when you were born, and what school and what took you to college, and then what got you doing skydiving so early in life?
Well, I grew up in Southern California and graduated high school, and I had a chance to go to a major university, and I'm not going to go into much detail, and play football. I was an all-league football player in high school, and I was offered a chance to try out. I didn't have a scholarship to try out. I went summer camp, and
were you a receiver or a passer?
I was a linebacker, actually.
Oh, is that right?
That's what I was going to be trying out for.
Sure.
And the freshman team was holding tackling and blocking dummies for the varsity. And long story short, I'm a scrawny 18-year-old kid, and I got tired of getting knocked on my ass every play. You know?
Yeah, I've been on the wrong end of that, but not at that level.
So coaches and I came to a meeting of mine and said, "Son, you're good, but you ain't that good." So I went back to California and went to.
You're good, but not that good.
Went to
put some meat on those bones.
Went to a junior college and played ball there, and my best friend, who's still a best friend, and we were discovering beer and girls about the same time.
Indeed.
So we better do something. I wasn't a bad student, but I wasn't a scholar, and so we joined the Army. And
what year was that?
That was in 1963.
Okay.
He went to the ESA, and I volunteered for Airborne Unassigned. So I had no idea what that entailed. So
had you heard at that point?
I saw
a
recruiting poster and all these Green Beret guys and things.
Sure, okay. Because this is before Roger Donlin had the Medal of Honor, and before
year before, yeah,
and before
but they had
the
that
song
brochure,
that
recruiting brochure there.
It was cool.
So and this is the recruiting station in El Cajon.
Yes, in San Diego County. Yes, sir.
So I had pretty good scores on these tests they give you. So I was sent for my MOS training to radar repair school in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. 33 weeks of radar repair school.
Oh, that's a long ways from Fort Bragg.
Long ways. So about 3/4 of the way through this, I'm thinking, well, maybe I ought to think about being an electrical engineer instead of a airborne ranger,
Sure.
Because that electrical engineer was looking a little more, So I turned down my airborne I came out of orders for jump school after this. 33 weeks later, I said, "No, I don't want to go to jump school. You can keep that."
Yeah.
So I was sent to the 2nd Infantry Division in Fort Benning as a radar repairman, PFC. There were about 10 radar repairmen and 2 radar sets in this 2nd Infantry Division. So all of us highly trained experts were duty soldiers,
Yes, indeed.
We're shoveling coal in the old barracks and all that. Wow, Jesus.
Meanwhile, you're right there next. You see the jump school going down.
And next thing happens, someone comes along and invents transistors. So all the vacuum tube sets that we learned on are outmoded. I started soldiering a little bit, and I was helping became friends with the first sergeant. I was doing the morning report and doing this, doing that, and I was driving the CO, and in this maintenance battalion. Came down to order for Korea. So went to Korea, 7th Infantry Division.
7th Infantry Division? Okay.
Yeah. Again, as a radar repairman, but the first sergeant was there in this company, and long story short, I became the operation. I'm AD5. I was promoted to Spec 5, and later converted to Sergeant E5, and I became the operations sergeant of the 707th Maintenance Battalion. and I was responsible for the SOIs and the POIs, but for the most part, these guys are all mechanics and whatever. So I wrote training schedules and wrote a training SOP and doing all kind of stuff. Yeah, got a lot of attaboys, So I said, well, this ain't so bad. So I volunteered for OCS.
Really?
Yep. And re-enlisted.
Whoa.
I figured, well.
You were serious.
Yeah, I figured I would have OCS, but then I would, instead of just about another year, I'd have like 2 more years to go before I could get out, but I would go be an officer.
Sure.
Went to OCS. I think at the end of 9 weeks, you have your first little social gathering. You relax a little bit, you talk to your TAC officers, and you drink a little beer, and that was a mistake.
Did you drink too much little beer?
Well, we had 11 p.m. bed check.
Oh, no.
And I was downtown partying at 11 p.m. Got back to base, and the friggin' student CQ said, this bunk's empty.
He figured it out, did he?
I wasn't there. I was downtown. So I got kicked out of OCS.
Oh, no.
Bad news, I had 6 years ahead of me in the Army.
Oh.
Good news, they didn't bust me. I got Article 15. I kept my stripes. And I was sent to the 5th Mech here in Fort Carson. And I'm 86. And they were gearing up the 5th Mech to go to Vietnam. And ironically, 5th Mech was in Da Nang, and we used to go down and eat in their mess hall at the Quan Tri there at the launch site. So I was operations sergeant of replacement detachment of the 5th Mech. And my MOS had been changed to O&I by that time.
Okay, sure. Operations and Intelligence. Yes, sir.
So I came down on orders for Germany to an independent infantry unit in Germany, in Ulm, Germany. I forget what the unit was. And while in processing through Frankfurt, my records were pulled. Because the guy had pretty high scores and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a young E6, which is,
Sure.
To try out as an instructor for the 7th Army NCO Academy. I said, sure. So, 7th Army NCO Academy. Yeah,
but they had Steins and big beer halls over there.
Oh.
That could be a double jeopardy,
Oh, man. So, I said, yeah. So I get on a train, go down to Bad Tolz, where the 7th Army NCO Academy is, in the same concern compound that the 10th Special Forces Group was.
Indeed.
So I go through the academy as a student, and I was like the number 2 in the class.
Oh, wow.
And I became a TAC officer at the 7th Army NCO Academy. I mean, I can count occasions for the best of them. And we had spit shine boots, starch fatigues, carried a swagger stick.
No.
Yeah. In the meantime, in the NCO club, I'm becoming friends with these SF guys. And I'm thinking, man, these guys aren't the same guys that I'm dealing with over here. I mean, these are some interesting guys. And they're calling my first name. And I'm thinking, hey, these are good guys,
Yeah, yeah.
And I think, well, I better do something. So I joined a Trojan Sport Parachute Club under the tutelage of Frank Norbury and Bud McFadden and Rudy Villarreal, Yomer White, and Gordon Jackson.
Wow.
I learned how to skydive.
No kidding.
Yep. So one day all my SF friends are saying, And I had my good conduct medal and my national defense medal.
Ooh, yes, of course.
And all these guys had about 3 and 4 rows of shit, you know. I mean,
But no good conduct.
They've been to Vietnam at least twice.
And they had no good conduct medals.
No, I don't know. So, and they keep saying, Cliff, man, you got to move over here, man. This is what, you know, you don't belong over there. So one day I put in a form, an application, 1049, to the Volunteer Special Forces. I'd be damned if they didn't accept it. I literally moved across the street.
Literally.
Signed in to the 10 Special Forces group, and the duty officer at the time on duty was Mike Taylor.
No.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep.
He was a captain then, I assume?
He was first lieutenant.
First lieutenant, yes. Okay. No longer a butter bar.
So I went to work in the S2 section, and then the group, and I wasn't SR qualified, I wasn't airborne qualified.
Right.
The group moved to Fort Devens in 67, 68.
Yeah, they were there by 69 when I got stuck there.
Yeah, and I went with them, and I was
Sure.
working in the S3 as a training NCO in the S3 section, and I was jumping quite a bit.
Sure.
And went down to jump school and went to.
Got officially qualified after you've already become a skydiver.
Yeah, I had 40, 50 jumps. I went to jump school.
Really?
Yeah. And I made a mistake one day of in the tower.
Yeah.
I asked the lane grader if I could log this. And he said, I'm probably the reason the Chattahoochee is curved. Right? I did so many push-ups at Fort Benning.
Oh, no.
So anyway, at least I'm qualified.
Yes, you are. Oh,
And I airborne qualified.
Yeah.
And I go back up to Fort Devens, and I took the correspondence course. I went down to Bragg a few times. I took a lot of MOS training. I went on missions in the White Mountains with teams, and they invited me along, you know.
Sure.
I went. And
this is all through 10th Group.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
And they ordered me my SF qualification. Some
Sure.
folks may question that, but screw them. I got more free fall time, dive time, and combat time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, long story short, so I finally got to go to Vietnam. I've been trying to go to Vietnam and I met a lot of guys, and I met I can't remember his name, nice guy. He was a captain, and he was at the FOB 4 in TEDA 68. Lives up in New York, did an interview with Vo Vin Yap at one time.
Really?
Yeah. Tells his name. Anyway, I met several people.
Certainly.
And he said, man, it's CCN where it's at. You got to go to CCN. I'm going,
Really?
that's where I want to go. So I get to the train, and sure enough,
So what year is this? This is 69 now, right?
69.
Yeah.
I go up to CCN, and here's that old black school bus with the window shot out and holes in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Came down, picked us up to the airport.
The metal wire in the windows.
Metal
Keep
wire.
the hand grenades
I'm going,
out. What?
what have I done? And I didn't know, and I had a top secret clearance by then.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know what they did.
Sure.
I'm thinking,
What did this good friend put me into here? Yeah.
So I go down to CCN, and Chuck Dover is a recon. I forget who the camp sergeant major was. But Dover was a recon guy. And well, yeah, I met you. You were there.
Yeah, I came back in October of
Okay,
69.
that's about the time I got there.
Sure.
I met you and Eldon and
Oh, yeah.
and Lynn and
Lynn was there?
and Robbie Robinson.
Absolutely. We had two Robinsons in camp.
And
Dave
and,
Maurer.
and Dave Maurer and Jeff Junkins.
Jeffrey L. Junkins, yes, indeed.
And I stayed in Junkins. And Jeff gave me a bunk in his hooch.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And I found out what I was going to be doing. And,
Sure.
oh, well. Then I went down to 1-0 school and
Down in Longton.
went back and got a team, RT Ohio, and getting ready to go in was the team leader was a lieutenant by the name of Beck, Travis Beck.
Travis Beck. Okay.
I mean, we're at the launch site getting ready to go, and one of the yards is getting the pin flares put together. It went off and hit Beck right in the leg.
Ooh.
Oh, jeez. Went back to Da Nang, and I forget. I talked to somebody. I forget who it was, but they gave me the team, and I didn't have any experience at all. But
Yeah.
they gave me the team.
You had a target on the launch pad. I mean, what more could you want?
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So I took RT Ohio as 1-0 and ran some pretty decent missions, as it turned out. Ronnie Hanna ran with me. Went up in the,
Oh, is that right?
yeah, went up in the DMZ.
Yeah.
Got some good intel. We were going to get out, and they were going to flip-flop another team. And as we were doing that, the weather came in. And I ended up spending 8 days in the DMZ.
Yeah.
You
What
know?
time of the year was that? It gets pretty cold up there,
It's
doesn't
colder
it?
than snot. It was like January, February.
Yeah, we were stuck up there for 5 days in the rain
Oh.
in December of '68. I tell people that's like it's Vietnam. It can't be that cold. Well, be advised, right, Cliff?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So that's how I got started at CCN. And then I had RT Ohio, and then Roger Teeter became my 1-1. And for about a year, we ran some pretty decent missions. And
For an entire year, then, huh?
yeah, pretty much close to it.
I remember what I remember most about you. You had that one corner in the clubhouse, and you had those nice new fatigues on, and you're a staff sergeant already, right? Yeah. And looked like a sergeant had his act together. So at some point along comes RT Florida.
Well,
Oh no! What about so Mel Hill? Take it from there. So you're on Ohio for a year. You get a little R&R, or take a little break, or you're enjoying the scene so much that
went to Sydney for R&R. Great time.
had a hard time coming back, huh?
Ooh. We won't go into detail on that one.
Well, Doug Letourneau had the same problem. He went to Australia and didn't want to come back. They
Excuse me.
treated him so well down there.
But Delta, things are changing. The 5th group left.
Right.
A lot of the camps, Delta Project shut down. CCS shut down.
Yeah. That's when they set the teams up to Khartoum and the CCN.
Yeah. And Sammy came up, and apparently he knew of me or whatever, but asked if I would take him out, and I said, of course. You know.
Sure.
Lightning, Lieutenant Wunderlich.
No, is that right? He's on your first team with Florida?
No,
Or you're still in Ohio?
No, it's still Ohio.
Okay.
It was kind of funny, though. He was the club officer and the vector control officer, and John Hobbs was sergeant major.
Oh, of course.
Hobbs says, Cliff, we want you to take Lieutenant Wunderlich out. I said, this guy wore big, thick glasses, weighed about 120 pounds.
Soaking
and
wet.
was a second lieutenant. And I said, no way. Fred came down. Sergeant Newman, you're the 1-0. We have no issues rank-wise. I would love to go on. So I took him out.
Because the Vietnamese could carry as much as he could carry.
Oh. So I took him and Sammy out on their first missions.
Really? Okay.
Out of CCN.
Sure.
And we had a good mission, actually. I'm happy to go into detail if you.
Well, absolutely, yeah. With you and Sammy, that's vintage classic stuff.
Me, Sammy, and Lightning.
Right. Okay.
So we go in. I think we went in on a ladder. We went in an area, and I don't remember the target designations anymore, but.
Across the fence.
Oh, yeah, it was in Laos. Big valley, and had these karst formations, like lava, rock.
Sure.
Looked like big, boobs sticking out of the ground.
Remind you of Headstone? Not that big.
They're a good size.
Yeah.
And our mission was, what I planned was, it was a POW stance mission, and I planned to go in on top of one of those, spend a couple of days, and you look down at the trail.
Sure.
Go down, set up, get a prisoner, get a Silver Star, and get out of there.
Did you practice setting up your classic Claymore mine?
Well, we practiced.
POW?
Yeah, we practiced the whole thing. However, once we all got on the ground, within about an hour of getting on the ground, we were completely surrounded. You could look down and see bushes moving, you know.
Yeah, indeed. And no wind again.
And no wind. So I said, Fred, you got your CAB yet? No. You see those bushes down there? Put a few rounds down there. He does. So we get a little shootout.
Put a few rounds down there.
So it's okay. You got a CIB in this trip. But we're high and dry. I mean, this is high and you can't get up there. You cannot get up there.
Sure.
And it's like climbing rocks. So, like second day in, trying to figure out what we're going to do here. And we had movement. And Sammy goes down to check out this movement. Boom! Comes back up. He said, yeah, this dude was climbing up down there, but I got him with a grenade. Well, Sammy, why don't you capture to shoot this and wound him or something, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
We need a POW.
So, probably that night, maybe the third night in, we're up there. We're sitting on, high and dry.
Yeah.
We hear this rumble. And I'll be damned, here comes some lights and we hear some voices, and we see a bulldozer. We don't see it, we see the lights and hear it.
Sure. It's on a trail?
Doing road work on a trail, you know.
Yeah.
Pushing shit out of the way and working the trail, and we were watching it. And he goes off over here, and I take some coordinates. And next morning, I called Covey, and I said, I think we got a camp of some kind. I gave him an intel report. They brought in fast movers, and I'm sitting on top of this rock pile. my compass and my radio, and these guys are flying below me.
Below you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we were. I mean, they were making gun runs.
Yeah.
And I'm working these guys, and they got a secondary explosions and some kind of a road crew yard, you know.
Yeah, and you destroyed a Russian bulldozer.
We got it. I assume it was a Russian bulldozer.
Yeah.
But that was, and then no way we could get off that hill, so they came and we got out. That was Lightning's first
mission. You got him a CIB.
And this guy turned out to be one hell of a soldier.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, he had his own team for a while. He took Ohio for a while, and then went on and had another team. And
the little skinny fucker did good.
Yep.
So at some point, as you progress, so he takes over the team, and where does Cliff Newman go from there?
Well,
does Mel come to you, or
just after this mission? Billy Waugh,
right,
comes up to me at the CCN
then
camp.
Sergeant Major.
I think it was still
still in E8.
He might have been still in E8.
Okay,
might have been Sergeant Major. He was Sergeant Major. Newman and Sammy was with me, and he knew Sammy was Halo qualified.
Right.
He says, "We're going to put together a Halo mission, and you guys are on it." I said, "Sergeant Major, I'm a skydiver, man." He said, "You're 1-0. You jump out of airplane, get your rucksack." So, we're going to make a Halo mission, and we eventually did.
Wow. Because he just, I remember he was at CCN near the end of my second tour, and he was talking to Hobbs or somebody, and God, I forget, it's either the mess hall or the club. Must have been the club, one or the other, but they're talking, and at some point, I remember Billy talking to Hobbs, "Have you all thought about jumping in?" When I heard that, I went back to Lynn and said, "Look, you see that little guy? Stay the hell away from him. He wants to jump into Laos." And so here we go. December. First, there's some interesting stories. So they designate you, and then you get assigned to RT Florida, where Mel Hill is the 1-0.
Yeah.
Okay, and he's got experience.
Yeah, some.
Some.
Billy knew him before. I didn't realize it until recently. At the next SOAR, we're going to do an airborne symposium that
Yes, sir.
Mike had set up. And, of course, Mike is no longer with us, so I'm going to probably host it.
And again, for our viewing audience listening, this is the 46th Special Operations Association reunion.
Yeah.
And they have programs for 4 days. It'll begin October 17th in Lost Wages, and it runs through. And we have programs, including POW MIA, committee meeting, other programs, and what Mike, the same Mike Taylor, who was a lieutenant that greeted you in 10th Group.
The same Mike Taylor.
Went on to become chairman of the joint POW MIA committee with the SOA and the SFA. Did great work there. And made the mistake of volunteering to run for the board of directors and was a VP to serve with great valor there and due diligence as the vice president. Great work, and sadly we lost Mike last month.
Yeah.
So you got the nod, and that'll be one of our features at SOAR this year.
Yeah. I'd like to back up a little bit here.
Please back. This is your story.
While in camp, every once in a while, we had good support. I mean, someone would go steal some steak somewhere or whatever, and we'd have a barbecue. And
Sure.
Mike Taylor, we were having a barbecue, and here's Mike Taylor, and I hadn't seen him since I signed in 10th Group.
And now he's a captain.
And now he's a captain, and he's over at NKP, Non-Com Phnom, Thailand,
Sure.
one of our launch sites. So we renew our acquaintance and go on. So anyway, to move ahead, we, under the auspices of Billy Waugh, and they had been working on this for some time. I didn't realize it at that time, but him and Shungle and some other people have been planning something like this for a long time. And just had never gotten any real support or okay to actually put a mission together.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, they finally got it. And Mel Hill had worked with him before in another operation. He's a good guy.
And Mel's an E7 at that time,
he's
too.
He's an E7,
Sure.
Sammy's an E7, I'm an E6. I was probably the most experienced 1-0, if you will, at the time.
Yeah.
Sammy was by far the most combat experienced. And Mel, good guy, my friend, up until his last days, was the ranking guy. So he's the 1-0. Sammy and I kind of took turns being a 1-1 or whatever. We didn't really have a structure, you know. I mean,
sure.
I ran a lot of stuff. Sammy ran a lot of stuff.
Because at that point, you're also pioneering a new track.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of flexibility when you're the first out the door or the first in the chute.
One thing you think about Halo is it's an error they make today, and I brought up it a couple of times when I was a guest speaker at the Halo School in Yuma. Man, that jump is just a way of getting on the ground. And once you get there, you got a mission to do, you know. And
Indeed.
so
Don't forget that. And of course, again, for our first-time viewers, Halo is high altitude, low opening, parachute jump, and usually you jump from at least 15,000 feet or more.
Yeah.
And if it's more, then you jump with air because there's no air to breathe. You have to have
O2, oxygen, yeah.
Oxygen.
Which we didn't have.
So you jumped under that threshold.
No, we jumped 17,000 feet.
No.
Yeah.
Without air.
Without O2. Now.
Okay.
There's a whole lot more to the story. We put a team together. They brought a couple guys and some Rod A mountain yards up from CCS, from Fubai, from Buy Me To It.
Right.
And then we had us, and we were going to go to Okinawa and train these guys with the help of the Halo committee on Oki, the Halo team.
Right.
Joe Markham, Ben Dennis, and others. So we did. And we had, And we were doing our jumping out on Ieshima, which is an island off of Okinawa, where the World War II news correspondent Ernie Pyle was killed.
Yes.
And our jumps were going to be from 17,000 feet. I'm sorry, I take it back, from 12,500 feet. The very first jump we get out, and the way today you have GPS. Then you have a stopwatch and a compass. So you have winds aloft, and you take what's called a combat sky spot. You got your winds. You take an average, combined with speed, and if you're jumping on an island, when you cross the shore, you hit the stopwatch, and so many seconds out is when you get out of the airplane. Very first jump, one of the mountain yards gets out. We had timers on him also, but he gets out and pow, he opens his parachute.
Right there?
At 12,000 feet. Over the South China Sea. And Billy got hold of a Marine helicopter, actually, that was flying around, and I don't know, maybe it was guard frequency. And they went and picked this kid up, Yeah, he said,
that's a lot of time under the silk.
Okay, next jump tomorrow. And he said, no way, Jose. That was the first one.
Oh, no.
We were jumping on, there was a little plowed up area, and the ground itself is hard-packed coral.
Ooh.
And me being a sky god, I'm thinking, no, I don't want to land on that dirt over there. I'm going to land on this road. So I land that road, do a PLF, scrape the G's out of my elbow. It takes about 30 seconds to puff up like a basketball.
Yeah.
Totally infected by the coral dust.
Oh.
I got to get that worked on. I go to the dispensary. We're sterile. We're not supposed to be there. We're
Again, traditional SOG, you weren't there when you were there. Indeed.
We can't tell the medics in the dispensary nothing. And we finally got through. We finally got everybody trained.
How long did that take overall then?
Oh, that was about a month, 3 weeks.
Well, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're dealing with Rod A that had never jumped before, never spent any time under the silk.
We narrowed the team down, the actual team, to Melvin, Sammy, myself, 2 Rod A yards, and the Vietnamese Tiwi, a third lieutenant, if you will, from the Arvin.
Yeah.
Who's a good guy. Turned out to be a pretty decent guy. And we were going to be the 6-man recon team, RT Florida, named after Colonel Shungle, head of Op 35 at the time, head of this operation, his home state. We go back to Vietnam, back to the CCN camp, continue training. I get this homing device. We practice homing in and practice ground operations and so on and so forth.
And how would the homing device work?
It was a large, cumbersome
black box
that you raise an antenna and it emitted a signal. The signal was picked up by regular AM radio. And when you got a null, in other words, you get a beep, 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 nothing, a beep, beep, beep. When you got a null in the signal, that was the direction you headed in. You had to at least know where you were, because if you did a 180, you'd go the wrong way. Because you got a null 180 also,
Oh, is that right?
You got a null behind you, This thing
Yeah.
didn't know. All it did was it picked up signal or no signal.
Oh, my gosh.
It didn't tell you where it was coming from. So we jumped into War Zone D. We made a lot of training jumps. We jumped into War Zone D and practiced, coming in and homing in on me and so on. Practiced.
That device actually worked?
Well, yeah.
In training, it worked well.
Yeah, it worked great.
Yes.
It didn't work in the rain.
Yeah.
So we also practiced homing and free fall. I was a group leader. I was going to be the first guy.
Right.
When I had the most free fall experience, and I was going to have marking panels, fluorescent colored, marking panels like you're marking a DZ and LZ, whatever.
Right.
Under the bungee cords on my backpack. Those two work great in good weather.
Oh.
And you could actually see them, And I'll be damned, I remember one jump, I was putting the team out, and I'm spotting out the door of this 130, and we were 12.5, and I was going to track to a point A, and the team was to form on me in free fall.
Right.
I get it, I'm tracking, and I open, and round parachutes make a loud noise when they open at terminal velocity. Bam, I open up, and bam, and damn, there's a parachute right next to me. And here's one of our mountain yards. Name was Eno Knee. No. I says, no.
WTF.
That's pretty good. How'd you get here? He says, Tung Si, I see you fly like this, so I fly like this. And that guy was just following me around the sky, And there's no word in his language for parachutes.
Of course, yeah.
So anyway, all that worked great in training. Mike told me later on, and that
from the weather.
Yeah, he said,
"Oh yeah,
you got no business. This is bad weather at this time of the year. You got no business trying to put a team in like that."
And just so for the record here, in Mike's interview with us, he was SOGcast, I think number 11 or 12. He talked about that specifically, and how he had talked to SOG headquarters, somebody down there, and talked to the stupid Air Force meteorologist. Did I say that wrong? Right? Anyway, weatherman, Air Force weatherman. And he said what you just said. Mike says, look, we worked this AO. There's bad weather. You shouldn't jump. They ignored him. And so you guys saddle up. And on a rainy night in December 1970, RT Florida jumps.
From 17,000 feet at 2 o'clock in the morning.
In the rain.
Well, we didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, of course.
There's some things they didn't tell us. Now, we had a console, an oxygen console, an O2 console.
Mm-hmm.
So unlike
in the planes, you're flying, getting out.
Yeah. Unlike scuba, you're breathing condensed air. In Halo, you breathe in O2, oxygen. So we had an O2 console. We got these hoses. We were sucking on it. And me and Sammy were going, when are they going to turn around here? I'll be damned they didn't.
They didn't.
Black out, lower the ramp, and turn that green light on.
Oh.
He said, well, shit, here we go. So I got out. I was the first one off the ramp and fell about 5 seconds, and I was in a rainstorm.
Oh.
And I was in a rainstorm the entire 5 days. I was on the ground, pretty much so.
Yeah.
What a rainstorm, per se. It was at that altitude at that time.
Sure.
And nobody could see me. You couldn't see those panels. And we had, for some reason, we had our rucksack mounted in front. Anyway, it pushed my reserve. These aren't the modern, backpack throughout.
Right.
They're Air Force 4-pin containers when your reserve's in front. Pushed my reserve, which was holding my altimeter up to my chest. So I'm falling through the night sky in the rain, trying to pull down that,
No.
What's my altitude? Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. I finally said, shit, this is enough of this. And I opened. I was about 2,000 feet, which is about where I wanted to be.
Well, thank God you had all that experience.
Yeah.
To make that kind of decision.
Yeah.
Oh.
And as I opened, the rain had subsided a little bit because I could see hilltops over here, which is a good sign that I wasn't on top of one of them.
Right.
I landed, and it was mushy 5 inches of water here and there.
Not in the jungle.
No jungle, open.
Wow.
Scant trees. In my camping, went over one tree, and I took some time getting it out because the wind would rustle and then the wind would stop, and I'd,
Sure.
Anyway, I got my canopy out, got it, all that stuff cached, set up the homing device, and it didn't work. It wouldn't.
At that point, you learned that the homing device was not waterproof.
Yeah.
Oh, the pain and the agony on that one.
So I kind of figured, well, this ain't good. I cached everything, got my rucksack, and got my Car 15 ready, and started moving toward high ground. And it
Still dark?
Yeah. Not long after first light, I encountered, by chance, one of the mountain yards.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we linked up and moved up further up to higher ground and set up a little place and kind of did some local recon around the area and heard some herd movement, heard some stuff, heard some farmers farming, heard some recon by fire over here, and
Really?
yeah.
Do you think they knew you were in the area, or was it just them training?
They knew we were in the area.
Really?
And to back up a little bit, we had a previous planned launch aborted.
That's right.
Because a message was intercepted from Saigon to Hanoi with our names and coordinates.
Really?
Yeah. So to what degree that was caused by the Walker family.
Right.
Remember the Walker family?
Of course, the
Navy
Walker
guy?
brothers.
Yeah.
And of course, at that time, back in 68 or 67, when they had the USS Pueblo, the Russians asked the Koreans to bring it in. When they did, they took all of the top secret encryption gear, went to Cambodia with it, and then combined with the Walker brothers' code, they were able to listen to a lot of the top secret traffic for both Navy and Army on that without our knowledge for several years, which is just explains a lot in terms of the SOG being compromised.
So I can't answer definitely if they knew we were there or not.
Right.
My semi-educated guess is, of course they did.
Particularly if they're doing recon by fire. Meaning, so again, for our listeners, that they don't hear it for the first time, if soldiers think an enemy's in their territory, they'll go out and do an area reconnaissance. They come to a jungle area or a crowd of bushes. Instead of getting their pants wet and getting thorns, they'll open fire on it. And that's the term recon by fire.
Kind of a saving grace from that end.
You knew where they were.
Well, they didn't know where we were, though, but they knew we were there.
Sure.
Ironically, as first light, I made contact with it was a nail fac out of NKP, Jim Latham and Mike Taylor.
No. So that was your first contact on the first day? Okay.
So, well, the following day, the morning.
So you were on the ground for 24 hours before you had radio contact with anyone?
12 hours.
Okay. Still, that's a pretty long time without radio contact.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm encoding, you take coordinates by back azimuth, hilltops and whatever. So I'm encrypting where I think I am.
Yeah.
And I had cut my map down to a 6-kilometer grid square.
Like we all
like
did.
we always operate in.
Sure.
Plus 2 clicks on
For
either
good luck.
side. Acetate so it fit in my side pocket very easily. So I'm encoding these coordinates up. And about 3 days in, Mike and the pilot, Jim Latham, found a hole, and they got down through the hole, and I put a shiny on them, a mirror, and they got an actual fix on where I was. Told me where I was. It was about 10 clicks from where I was supposed to be.
10 clicks? Oh, my God.
The Air Force, and we ascertained later on, they fly by Doppler. They're taking azimuths the same way with sophisticated equipment off of river bends, mountain tops, and everything. Well, this valley we were in was about 15, 20 kilometers long, and it was exactly alike. It looked very similar. So they were just following a track, off of where they should have been. Anyway, so after 5 days, they did bring in.
And so, did you get any other intel reports there? And then also, after you answer that, then what if any combo did you have with any other teammates? And then what, if anything, did they in turn develop for any intel of half value or any value at all? Other than, let's just, like the analysts have said, we got to get out of this place.
I linked up with one of
the Rade
yards.
Yeah.
The other yard and the Vietnamese guy hooked up. And they had radios, but they weren't communicators. Sammy and Mel were by themselves.
Wow.
I was the only one talking.
No kidding.
Until they finally started coming in to get us, and look, we got to find you, man. You got to tell us where you are, or give us some idea which way to fly to find you. Melvin's just you
Yeah.
I don't want to say
he didn't have the time on the ground that you all had.
Well, no.
Yes.
Anyways, so there were 4 separate pickups by Jolly Green.
After 5 days.
Flew us into, I think it was Udorn, an Air Force base in Thailand. There's a Blackbird sitting there. Flew us straight into Saigon. Got into Saigon about 2 o'clock in the morning. And he had a spread laid out with champagne and hors d'oeuvres and stuff. Yeah.
No kidding.
And we've been in isolation for about 2 or 3 days, on the ground 5 days, and 2 more days getting into Saigon. And we were probably pretty ranked by that time.
So you had your own intel reports to Sammy, and then did Mel bring in any other additional information to the table from that?
I don't.
Because they would have been interviewed separately from you because you were all both separated. And again, in the top secret war, we don't talk to each other. Did people running the show talk to you, get your story?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you interview Sammy yet?
No, we're going to work on him. Hopefully that's SOAR this year.
He should be. He's supposed to be involved in this Halo thing.
No, he's planning on it. It's booked. Yeah. He's ready to go.
I don't know if they did or not, to be honest with you.
And so at any point does somebody come out and say, RT Florida, you have done something historic today. The first time probably in Army history where we had a team that haloed into a combat zone.
Well, we didn't. Those of us on the ground did not make that claim. I mean, we don't know.
Of course.
We're ground
you guys
guys.
Yeah.
But it's my understanding that Op 35 went all the way to the agency and researched if there was ever an actual combat, planned combat Halo jump, and they could not find anything.
No kidding. So that's what makes this jump so historic. It's the first, then you're followed by 4 more Halo jumps, and then there are at least 12 or 13 static line jumps that were also performed by some of them before your jump.
Yeah.
But static line is far different from Halo.
Yep.
In Laos.
But they it's not a joke, although it sounded like it, but they termed our mission a success, not so much from intel, but the fact we all got out alive.
Hey, yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
And then with Mike Taylor, I can't imagine from the Covey side how rigorous it was just to locate of the other 4 people, because you had your one Rod A, but they still had to contact the others, and they were keeping low profile on the radio, that was pre-designed, correct? To have minimal commo from you all, because RDF out there was pretty pretty strong.
Well, actually,
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
no, Mel's a commo guy. He was commo, and he had a PRC 64, which is then kind of state of the art. It was voice CW.
Oh, CW too.
Combination, yeah.
Oh wow.
And it was about so big. And our primary means was going to be CW. And when I heard that, I had Roger Teeter, my former 1-1, who was a commo guy, give me a few, because I don't know the code, but
sure.
I learned enough to call for help. You know?
Yeah, SOS.
Yeah, and I learned our call sign and you know.
Wow.
But he never came up on it.
Man, because that's one of our SOG vulnerabilities was commo. Once we got on the ground, and we had begged for different radios. So finally, by the end of 1970, at least you had something different, and it seemed like it worked a little bit, if not better than what we had.
I remember sitting on an operation, and I forget which one it was, but it was a quiet, starlit night with a trillion stars. And I'm thinking, now they can talk to the moon, but I can't talk to anybody. You know? So
that's a very cogent thought.
yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So our Recon guys are struggling with FM, which they had in World War II, probably World War I, and by '69 they're walking and talking on the moon, and we're in Laos, and the Recon teams can't connect. Great thought. I hadn't thought about it that way. But you thought about that on a starlit night in Laos.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Cliff. So, after any more follow-ups from that, or any postscripts, people coming back to talk about it? Is it going now with the Halo School? Is this still a method that the Army has within its realm of weapons to use for tactical advantage and top secret missions?
It became, excuse me, it became a much more popular means of insertion, but they had the same problems: navigation, ground commo, Murphy's Law.
Yeah, always Murphy's Law.
And not too long back, they were making Halo School one of the JFK courses, one of the
right.
training group courses.
Sure.
For everybody, which was a huge mistake, and they've since cut that out. So, and then JAG got involved.
JAG got involved?
Sure.
No.
You can't go to the bathroom without getting legal permission from a JAG officer somewhere.
Indeed. Okay.
But some of the teams used, I think 10th group might have had a Halo insert. I think 7th group made a Halo insert. But to get through, and today with communication, contrary to back then, you can talk to the Pentagon from the hilltop in Bangladesh, for God's sakes.
Sure.
If they have any hilltops in Bangladesh.
Well, and then getting back to you just quickly went across a couple of points, which is the difference between Halo and a conventional jump. With a conventional jump, you have pathfinders or people that would be on the ground first to establish a good LZ, and they would have signals from there that the aircraft can vector in on, or signals at least that the jump master can hone in on to know that they're on target. Halo, you ain't got none of that.
No.
No, you're just jumping the hell out of the airplane. Like you said, there's a lot of the vectoring and things like that. And that's a major contrast, which adds to the top secret capabilities, but in terms of making it work, that's the $64,000 challenge.
We had, there were 5 Halo jumps in Vietnam done by SOG. None of them were really successful.
In the traditional sense.
And we lost one guy on one.
Right. He got hung up in the trees.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes, indeed. Any other Any other follow-up thoughts on this line? Even Billy Wall did one.
He did.
To his credit. I mean, I was throwing bricks at him a little bit in the beginning there, and we ran away from him. But he did jump.
He did.
He did.
You know, people love or hate Billy Wall.
Yes.
You know, I kind of liked the guy myself.
You have to.
He was the proverbial soldier who would do anything he would expect you to do.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
Sure.
A lot of people accused him of, recklessly sending teams in and people in here, there, everything, which may have a valid point, but he would have done the same thing himself.
There's no question about that.
So
yeah. Well, anyways, we're at that point, sir. Upon reflection, so after your Army career, and then from there you returned to Signal, California?
Well, after I was medically retired, and at a time when we didn't have the counseling capabilities as they do today, both psychologically and work related. You know,
sure.
I was at Letterman Army Hospital in San Francisco, and I was still just 29 years old. I was an E7, so I'd made rank right up there.
Sure.
And thought, what the hell? I'm just going back to my civilian life here,
Yeah.
Which was, after 10 years in the Army and 6 in Special Forces, may not have been the smartest thing to do.
Well, it was a challenging transition.
I took retirement. Piddled around. I used, and I stayed with my parents and who were living in Santee in San Diego County at that time. I used my GI Bill instead of going back to school. I used my GI Bill to get my pilot's ratings, and I got a commercial multi-rating. So I loved the flying. I was thinking I could get a job, but no airline is going to hire a one-legged pilot,
Oh, they're prejudiced?
Well, I mean, it's just, again, there's insurance things, et cetera, et cetera. It may be different today, I don't know. But
right.
Then I had, I had...
Well, the other problem you had competing with, you were competing with thousands of Vietnam vets that had combat experience.
Yeah.
And they all had both legs, to be rudely blunt about it. And you're up against that. That's 2 strikes against you right away.
I did find a flying job, actually. I met a guy, another airport bum, and he had a brother-in-law who was a principal in a wholesale produce packing company in the Coachella Valley. And they had, during the...
which is east of San Diego County.
Yeah.
In Southern California.
So during the grape growing season...
Sure.
Which is the summer months, they had a bunch of growers in Mexico under contract. And he had a small plane down there. He wanted somebody to go down and fly him around and whatever. I said, sure, I can do that. So I went down to Mexico and spent a long summer. And I speak a little Spanish, and I went from just ferrying him around to going out doing quality control work and landing in dirt roads and cow trails and in an industry that I knew absolutely nothing about. But I gained a lot of hours, a lot of experience flying, and unfortunately the company went under not long after that, and I was offered a job in Los Angeles with the wholesale produce company on the LA produce market, and I had gotten married. First big mistake, or not the first, but right up there. So I had to get a job. I took it, and long story short, that parlayed into about a 30-year career that I retired from in 2006.
Well, at one point when we reconnected, you had the best almonds in town. I remember getting the different almonds and fruits and stuff from you. Whenever we connected, the price was right and the stuff was great.
Well, I ended up working for a distributor and a packer and a shipper of dry fruit and nut products, and this is interesting.
Absolutely. They kept you busy. I know you weren't sitting around letting any grass grow on your ass.
And it was fairly lucrative.
So then at some point, the first marriage ends. You're single again. And at some point at the Special Operations Association.
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
I had a second marriage.
Oh, I forgot about that one. Okay.
To my favorite bartender.
Indeed.
First one lasts about a year and a half. Second one lasts about 8 months.
But you had some good drinks in between.
That's right. So anyway, that fizzled, and in 98, 99,
Right around there.
yeah, 2000.
We had a couple of events at Special Operations Association reunions, and there was a couple of years we had programs for our POWs, MIAs, and Gold Star events.
Well, I think Jim Butler might have been. He found my wife's, as you know, my wife Karen's brother was killed in action.
Yes, sir.
On a recon operation in Vietnam on his 23rd birthday in May of 1971.
Yes, sir.
The SOA invited his mother, sister, good friend, two sisters, good friend, to a reunion in Vegas.
Right.
And they came. And his one sister is a very attractive lady, and she and I hit it off, as it turned out.
Indeed.
Making a long story short, we've been married, we've been together 22 years now.
Wow. So that was a good wedding you had.
It was a hell of a wedding.
Indeed. And so, so part of there's so many other things you've been involved in. You've been involved in the Special Operations Association which again was formed by SOG men, expanded to include all the air assets that we could confirm that worked with the teams on the ground. And of course, there's those times when we have events that acknowledge those that didn't come home, those we've lost, and the Gold Star families are always at the top of anything we remember or salute in our own small way.
Yeah.
And you were president at least twice on the board of directors for long terms. And like I said earlier, I remember you holding together the reunion when everybody's coming together, and you're the only guy behind the counter pulling your hair out, keeping things going back in those days. And then at some point, you moved to North Carolina, got involved with the SFA, where you were executive director for at least 9 years, right? Or was it 10? Or my math is bad.
14.
14?
I think around 14.
That long? Whoa. And so then, after 14 years of serving the SFA, being the glue that kept the board of directors together, in my humble opinion, I'm biased, then you and your sweetheart moved to Prescott, Arizona.
We did.
Today. And any other little points along the way you want to bring out? If not, then we're getting pretty close to wrap-up time, sir.
Well, you mentioned our wedding was that you
phenomenal.
attended.
Indeed.
While working for this company in Los Angeles, one of our perks was membership at the Los Angeles Athletic Club, which I jumped on and got back into some decent shape and met some interesting people who are still friends with today.
We had some great meetings up there, too. Our SFA chapter came up a few times for meetings that you put together or helped sponsor at the club.
Yeah. Had Billy Waugh come out and give his little talk one time.
That's right. He had his whole do-rag thing on, talking about his time in the mountains in Afghanistan.
I was actually elected to the we had a member advisory board of governors that advised the management on what members wanted, et cetera, et cetera. I was actually elected to that board, served for 6 years, and in my final year, I was the chairman of the board. And I was quite proud of that. I was the only one without at least an MBA. Barely a high school education.
Yeah, but the only one with a Purple Heart, CIB, and a Silver Star, at least. Yes, indeed. Well earned.
Yeah.
We might add.
But that was fun, and then we were married there, and it was a very nice event.
Indeed, it was. All righty, sir. Anything else as we close out here?
I can't think of anything unless you want to ask me something.
No. The two big things. That's why we invited you, is because in SOG history, you participated in two major moments in time, and thank you for coming out and joining us tonight. And with that, we'll wrap it up. As always, we thank Jocko Willing Productions for making these SOGcasts available, for sponsoring us to make them happen, and to bring our stories to the public. As always, we thank the veterans and the service members today are serving our country near, far, and wide, and our prayers are with them always. We thank our first responders, the Border Patrol, particularly during these times. We have to support them and continue to pray for our country as we move forward. And as we close out, we thank veterans, particularly men like Cliff Newman, who served our country for a long time with great valor and distinction. And we thank him for joining us today. And as always, when we close our shows, we want to remember those who couldn't make it today. Amen. Airborne. Well, Cliff Newman has left the building, and we thank Cliff for coming by tonight. It's time for our little postscript on SOGcast number 32. Gary, jumping in the rain in Laos.
In the dark.
In the dark.
With a compass and a stopwatch.
And I'm not able to read his altimeter because his bag pushed up his parachute up to his face. He couldn't read his altimeter.
Oh my gosh! I mentioned to you after we stopped recording. The steel it takes to do some stuff like that.
I forgot to ask him if he had to buy a reinforced jock strap to carry those balls around.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just and Cliff's just a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's the same Cliff Newman today as he was when I met him in 70 or 69 at the CCN bar.
Yeah.
And he was just calm, cool, down to earth. He's somebody who knew his business. He's like the epitome of the SF soldier.
Yeah.
Tall, handsome. He was suave and debonair back then too,
Yeah.
Cool guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, all of the incredible work he's continued to do, going back and to the side of that bright light, it's pretty incredible.
And he's so humble about it. Other Americans did it too. Do you remember who they might be? And there might be some guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like the story about Archie Intruder, the O2 that went down with the Air Force pilot and Sergeant First Class Fernandez. I think there was a family member who got a nonprofit to support him. They went back. Well, no, they recovered them. They went back for one of the members, maybe from the helicopter crew.
Mm.
Something, somehow. But there was a private one that went back.
Mm.
They were able to get some remains on that to confirm. And, I'll get that when we're done. But they did go back.
Yeah.
So, but again, like Jim Short and Jones that we've heard about for the second SOGcast number 002, rare. And just to go back, and it's a call of duty.
3 times.
Yeah.
3 times.
And he said he was going to go back, but I think now, of course, with DPAA these days, we could have gone on a lot more about our disenchantment with DPAA's efforts in Southeast Asia, but that's another story for another day. And but he's just a cool guy, down to earth. And even after those years with the SOA, he was the man that was like carried the big load.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Garrett Grant, there's always a lot of people to put it together, but he was the man out front. We came into the registration desk. Here's Cliff. Cliff, who's volunteering with you this year? Harry and somebody. Well, I'm here now. There he was, man. He just got it done. Yeah. So, and just then over time, because I just knew him from being in the bar. He's cool. He's running Recon. What more do you need to know?
Yeah.
He's one of our SOG Recon dogs. And then he does the jump, and then we hear later about the whole bright light thing going in with Habu. So, hopefully for at the SOAR this year, which will be October, we've talked to Sammy to get that side of the story. And again, it's like Oh my God, he fell 20 to 30 feet, knocked on. How did he even survive that? First off, and then he plays hide and go seek with the NVA, and now it's dark. I can go out and pop my shoulder back in.
Oh.
Oh.
I love how they try to send him a rope again.
Yeah.
It's like negative.
I think the legs may have been just a little bit stronger.
Not doing that dance twice.
Yeah. So you have Cliff that had all that time experience. Sammy was a career soldier, and the other day, well, now it's been 3 weeks. About 3, I get an email from a guy, and he goes, "You should interview Master Sergeant Sammy Hernandez. I was in the 82nd Airborne, and he was our either the sergeant major or first sergeant." And he says, "That old man would take us out there and run our ass in the ground. We were all embarrassed. He was 20 years older than us, and he ran us into the ground." But he said, he knew his shit about being a soldier.
Absolutely.
And he said, "You're going to get him off, so I'm working on it."
Oh, yeah, that bright light story was, pretty powerful, and just again the visuals described in your book, and the helicopter doing that U-turn and then flipping upside down and crashing into a mountain face, like that's unfortunately just a lot of what was going on.
See, in my book, which is SOG Chronicles, which I'm proud to say we mentioned that story, but not in the detail I wish I'd had. But again, the reason why is I'm talking to Cliff, talked to Sammy very briefly when I'm working on the story, and one of the guys from DPAA, and Cliff is just so damn hollow. When I'm writing the story, he gave me the general parameters and never went into the details like today. I mean, going down that hill, the guy getting the round in his leg, keeping him alive, getting down to the bottom, the other guy gets that, whatever it was, that hit him in the back. My God. Yeah. Just incredible valor, courage on his part.
Incredible.
Yeah, so I'm biased. He's just a great guy. And he had a great wedding.
Absolutely. I bet that was a riot. Were all the boys at that one, or
no? Oddly, because they planned it and they kept it kind of quiet, and they just again, he's a low profile guy.
Yeah,
it's not going to be in the Smell Like Times or anything. It's like, I got this lovely woman, I'm marrying her, and for years all the guys are going, "Hey Cliff, you're a lucky guy, man. If you come to the reunion, be sure to bring your wife."
Yeah.
She brightens up the room.
Amazing.
With that smile of hers. Yeah.
I just figured if Tilt was in the house, the party was definitely a good one.
Well, we went up with my dear bride Anna, and Elena was just a little one at the time.
Wow.
And that may have been the second wedding she had gone to, but she was in pretty good conduct for that night and had a good time.
Good to hear.
And and then getting to a very serious side of Karen, her brother, was Gail Denke. And Cliff said he was May of 70, I think, or 71. But either way, what we didn't say was Eldon Bargewell went in on the bright light to get her brother. And talk about small circles and valor. He got in and was able to get him out.
Wow.
Return him. And then the other sidebar on the Deneke family, when Doug Letourneau, a.k.a. the Frenchman, returned from Vietnam, he was bound and determined to get his fixed-wing license. And he heard about the school, and he lived in the Spell area at the time, and he went to his flight school, and his flight instructor was Dale Deneke's father.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And so Doug trained up, got his pilot's license, and then he was in the middle of learning for fixed wing. He was in the middle of going to rotors. That was his true love. He really wanted to fly helicopters, but he knew he had to get fixed wing because there might be money there. And even I figured out that in 1971, with all these Vietnam vets coming home, even if I had gone to flight school, they ain't going to hire some knucklehead that just got out of flight school. They could hire a Vietnam vet that's been jockeying helicopters or whatever,
Yeah.
But Doug did it, and he's gone through the course, and that was sadly when Dale was killed in action. And there's other stories that spin off, but that's just such a tragic moment in time.
Yeah.
His dad was never the same.
Yeah.
Like the family, of course.
Can't imagine.
Yeah. So those are the stories, part of that SOG lineage. You know, and at some point, we're definitely going to bring in one of the family members to talk, because it's that side of the issue that nobody talks about. But you know, if a conventional soldier, if Joe Bipp the Ragman gets killed with the 1st Division, Joe Bipp goes home, it's sad, everybody's emotional, and it's tragic, the family's impacted forever, it's a loss they cannot ever replace. They come back, there's a funeral, there's a service, the Army's there, they pay homage, and then it's up to the family to carry on how they're going to remember Joe Bipp the Ragman. So they know. They know where he died, what unit he was with. So in the case of Dale Dennehy, even though Eldon Barswell got him out, the family didn't know where he died. And we had family, like the family that we point to is Donnie Shue, who, when I went back to Nam, we had been at base over a week or so, and RT Maryland was wiped out. The Americans were killed, because at that time they were trying to kill all the Americans, let the Indigs go. One of the 3 KIAs was Donnie Shue out of North Carolina. And his remains came back in 2010. In fact, it was the weekend they killed Osama bin Laden. And we were down there in mass because we all knew him. And we had talked to both of his sisters. And you just go through this with the family. Cousins were there. And cousins who were just knee-high to an asshopper when he went to Vietnam. And so 2010, that's 40 years later. Yeah, or 40 years later, he comes back, his remains. By that time, all his parents, aunts and uncles are gone. So he's got sisters, all of whom are older, and of course nieces and nephews and stuff. And the family's just like, oh my God, what they go through.
And this, to me, is why the work that you all continue to do to continue to find and recover these MIA members is, you know, because their families are still going through that. You know, they have no information other than, you know, their loved one is missing in action. And that's a pain and, you know, suffering you want to put an end to if you can.
Yeah, and even the guys like Fred Zabatowski, who we talked about a lot last night, and anybody who earned the Medal of Honor, with the exception of Mike Rose, that's a different story because he got his in 2017. All of those Medal of Honor except for Valor in South Vietnam didn't say where.
Yeah.
And of course the KIAs and the MIAs, they don't even hear anything other than the fact they get a notice that your son's missing in action. And it just goes the silence for decades and the pain those families go through. So there's a few good candidates out there. Definitely going to bring in a family member at some point. I think that would be a good read.
Definitely.
And the National League of POW MIA Families, which has been fighting this battle since the 70s. Bringing, and this lady, Ann Mills Griffiths, she's 80. And she goes 7 days a week. And she never stops. She's been through 3 husbands, and she's tough. And she's been working this thing. And you know, she's built this rapport with the governments of North Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. They all know her. And she knows their family members, and they trust her more than the government because she's been there. She doesn't lie. She doesn't play games. If something's bad, she'll say, this is bad. Well, and if something's good, which now things have really improved, particularly with China doing so much more invasion into Laos and Cambodia and trying to infiltrate deeper into China, into Vietnam. So, but that progress, like Tiff said, there's much more progress from them. Now, if we can get the United States government to focus on our Vietnam vets, we'd be really happy.
That's right.
So that's where we are. What a night with Cliff.
Yes, sir.
And with that, we'll bring this all to any other final thoughts from your point?
As always, Phil, thanks for letting me be
You're
in
part
the
of the
room.
team, brother.
Yes, sir.
Indeed, indeed. So with that, we'll close out here one more time. As always, we close SOGCast number 32. We always thank Jocko Willing Productions, his team, his outstanding team, which makes this all possible. And as always, we thank our veterans, our service members today that are serving our country, and the EMT people, the first line people that are online, and our Border Patrol. They just absolutely got to get extra prayers in there for them these days, because they've had unusual stressors, as we've seen ever since January 20th, 2020. And we just continue to pray for them. And as always, we want to thank men like Cliff Newman who stepped up to the plate to serve our country over the years. And we want to thank them. And on a self-promoting note, we always encourage people to run out to buy this third book, SOG Chronicles, On the Ground, and Across the Fence, where we'll have some more people back to talk about stories they're in. And last but not least, we salute those who did not come home. Today, we still have 1,582 Americans in Southeast Asia remains that have not been returned. Thank you. God bless America.